We are here today to talk about 5G in the context of network slicing, and it's a great pleasure to welcome my guests today. First of all, from the University of Strathclyde and their commercial wing, Neutral Wireless. I think that's right, StrathSD?
StrathSDR.
And the University of Strathclyde is based in Glasgow in Scotland and been trailblazing the development of radio, particularly private 5G, and but also steeped in the development of mobile and wireless over many years, Malcolm.
Yeah. Well, StrathSDR stands for, we come from the StrathSDR radio group, so that's software-defined radio, and we use predominantly Xilinx FPGAs to make our waveforms.
We'll get into that in a minute. And it's Erin Rose from Verizon Business. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
You guys have been trailblazers in the context of both public 5G, but also private 5G, and the whole development of network slicing, which we'll get into.
Great. Yep.
And your role at Verizon is?
I am the head of business strategy for emerging and creative tech for media and entertainment.
Great, fantastic. And you are a colleague of Malcolm's, Neutral Wireless,
yes,
obviously.
Right.
Got the T-shirt, you've got literally, and you've been the brains behind some of the development, along with Malcolm, of what has been a pioneering kind of approach to private 5G and its use in live events for media.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting journey. We're a small team in Glasgow, but we've had some fantastic opportunities.
And Malcolm, of course, is wearing his special jacket today to signify the Scottishness of what they do. But it's great to have you. So let's dive into it, because we haven't got a great deal of time. But explain, first of all, that concept of what does network slicing mean? Maybe we could start with Malcolm.
Yeah, well, a slice of so we've got two networks. We've got a standalone network and a non-standalone network.
What is this? Let's just take it bit by bit, for an audience that may not. What does standalone 5G mean in context of a network?
Standalone is the latest, and basically in America they are they're further down the road than we are in Europe in deploying standalone networks. Standalone networks have a very powerful. You can slice inside a standalone network with.
You take it as literally a slice of the frequency.
Yes, you dedicate the QoS to the UE, to the SIM card, and then you can actually have, by application or traffic type, you can shape exactly what's going on at the UE over and above other traffic that's on your network. So it's a way to orchestrate and guarantee the quality of service to a UE.
So we've been talking about 5G for years now. It was a phased approach to standards, wasn't it? So the reason that standalone isn't here yet is because that was part of a later phase of release of the standards. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the non-standalone networks is where the 4G network is the anchor for the 5G UE, and standalone is where you don't need an LTE 4G bearer. You just go straight to a 5G NR waveform.
Right. So a slice is essentially dedicating some of the bandwidth to a particular use case. It doesn't have to be media, but it's a great use case for media, isn't it? Yeah. What kind of applications can you introduce for production?
Well, it's funny, I was just over in London for your wonderful IBC Accelerator program kickoff, and one of the things that I was talking with some of the folks there was, can we look at network slicing for ENG use cases? Can we look at that for news coverage? And I think that's one of the biggest places that we're seeing it is with private networks in conjunction with network slicing. Yeah.
So it's all about scaling, isn't it? I mean, so you've got private 5G, and we'll talk about that as well, but private 5G or network slicing or both of them together, how would you introduce those for different levels or different tiers of production? So
I think it's the application of ENG, slicing is a really, really good option, to be able to go kind of anywhere that you have network coverage and have that guaranteed quality of service in order to deliver your video. But it's still a finite spectral resource, and you still have your punters, your customers to consider. So when you start to have 10, 15, 20 cameras trying to all take a slice, I think at that point it becomes quite difficult for a public network to support. And I think that's where a private network can be highly complementary. So that we don't really see them as being competing technologies, but rather very complementary. So you could deploy a private network locally to support many cameras, and we've done that at some quite international events. And then use your network slice to get, a selection of those video feeds offsite, and and bring in remote production.
So for the private 5G, you need to get spectrum from the regulator. You need to apply for that. You need time to do that. In most cases, unless there's an emergency event, like there was with the Queen's funeral in the UK a few years ago, and you deployed it, didn't you, to part of that in Scotland. So what's that process for getting spectrum? And you don't have to do that with network slicing, do you? Because the operator, Verizon, would already have that spectrum, and you can turn it on and turn it off.
Yeah, especially in the US. And we actually did some network slicing for the F1 Grand Prix last year, and we did it for the Super Bowl this year with our Mobile Creator Studio. So that was very cool. So we got to see that in action.
What's the Mobile Creator Studio?
It's allowing content creators to stream directly to YouTube and Twitch. And so we did that over a slice.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So you literally is an application inside a device.
The SIM is tied to the slice, and it is just an application in the phone for a Mobile Creator Studio. Yeah.
And what do you have to be a mobile creator?
You could be a mobile creator. Just get an audience, Mark. This is your audience.
You could provide me with a slice.
We could, if you had a really great audience who wants to see the slice. Yeah. So that was just, that was a trial that we did over public. But we have done private as well, network slicing there.
So tell me a bit more about that, the applications, the kind of productions that you've been trialing this with.
Yeah. So, I think that's, I think the live streaming, whether or not that's Twitch or YouTube, we've seen a lot of that, with those live broadcasts. One of the things that, even though we've talked about ENG, I think one of the use cases that I'm really looking forward to would be Cine. I think there is a really great opportunity there with Cine and network slicing, because you hear about so many RF coordinators right now on set just trying to allocate that spectrum. So if we could actually do that ourselves with the slices, then I think we could really release some of that congestion.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think of that in a context of not live.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to get my head around.
But everything's still connected on set. Right? So it doesn't matter. It's like you still have someone, all of your tools are still connected on set, and you have your actors and your crew on phones too. And so everybody's still using all that spectrum. So if you could really allocate that, then you won't have as much congestion for that.
Got you. Yeah, got you. Tell us, Malcolm, about the private 5G that you've been developing. It's a network in a box, isn't it? And you get the spectrum on a case-by basis from the regulator. Tell us a little bit about that development story.
Yeah. So, again, we're in America.
Well, you just won an award as well, haven't you?
We have.
Yeah, at NAB for one of the best technical papers.
And an IBAM.
And then IBAM. Oh, IBM, the International Association of Broadcast Manufacturers. Yeah.
So again, there's so FCC states very different spectrum policies, and in Europe, in UK we have Ofcom, and again, kind of the Europeans have different bands for mobile operators. So it's kind of very different. So in UK we've been using Ofcom. We have shared spectrum from 3.8 to 4.2 gigahertz. So we've been using these FPGA software-defined radios to build very uplink biased, heavily biased uplink.
What kind of uplink do you need? What kind of uplink can you provide?
In UK, there is 400 megahertz of contiguous spectrum. And in 100 megahertz, we can easily achieve 300 megabit per second with CISO radios. And now with release 17, we're constantly going faster. We've a colleague who's sitting over it, Douglas, has actually touched 840 megabit per second in a 100 megahertz channel. So this allows us to put multiple cameras down and wireless. So you can pop up in a stadium that isn't, or a theater, a venue, which is not cable friendly. That would take you a lot of time to deploy the cables. Some, for health and safety reasons, you can't deploy cables. So that's and a private network. These are very low power, very quick to deploy. And the MEC, the edge compute, the local user plane is on premise. So it's very quick. If you want to,
latency, big impact on the latency reducing latency.
So we're in a big sporting event this summer in France. We're going to be using lots of these private networks to deliver very low latency video feeds to mix in with the wired SIMT cameras, and we can do this all at 4K UHD. Yeah.
Wow. And are you in that work in France? Are you using slicing to complement what you're doing with the private network as well?
No, there's
private.
In France, it's the big baguette, no slicing.
Fantastic. Well, so that's very interesting development. It's come a long way from when it was first deployed in September 2022, I think, wasn't it? In terms of a real live production. Now you're working on one of the biggest events in the world.
Yeah. So our first kind of outing in the broadcast sector was in 2021, when and did the MotoGP, down at Silverstone. And following on from that, we did the IBC Media Accelerator program, which is where the network in the box really kind of came together, and we did some productions all over the world using that.
Yeah.
And that led on to the
coronation as well, didn't it?
The coronation
in London.
So the coronation's quite a good example. But so we had 7 cells along the Mall, and from those we were providing over a gigabit per second of uplink connectivity. So we supported 60 devices from 20 international broadcasters on the one network. But the problem that we have is that data it still remains local unless you have backhaul. And that's where the slicing really comes in.
Good point. So you almost then you can combine the two, one for kind of like capturing multiple cameras and dedicated bandwidth, and the slice can help you then to scale that production to another level. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, no, I think that's so fair because, we're getting those requests not just on that live broadcast, but we are getting those on Cine too, which is people want those dailies. They want that footage right away. And so I think that's such a great use case. Yeah.
Is slicing ready to, you've been trialing it, but if for a media production that wanted to try and, or to experiment, but even to obtain the capability from you, can they do that today?
They can do it on private. So we do offer private slicing, and we actually are showing that off at our booth right now. So,
okay. But public slicing, public network slicing is coming soon.
Coming, yeah.
But not yet. Okay.
Yep.
And so is there a known kind of an understanding of a business model for it? What would it cost? Let's just look at the private side of it first. What's it cost to get a private network in a box and the spectrum as a kind of a...
So in UK, again, there's the States, and in UK, the bandwidth, the spectrum's very cheap. It's not mobile network prices. I think we can get 100 megahertz channel in UK for something like £800 for the year. So it's near free. The equipment we are using, because it's an FPGA and the group that we are partners, it's not a tier 1 radio. It's not an Ericsson and a Nokia or so it's not a tier 1 price tag to it.
Right.
I wouldn't say it's cheap, but compared to what's out in the macro networks, it's very affordable. And some of these COFDM, what we're doing is kind of augmenting what the broadcasters are already doing with COFDM. So we're coming in and delivering a private network.
Explain COFDM.
Well, COFDM is like a one-way. It's a transmit and receive only. There's no return path. So the networks that we're delivering actually are full IP, and they work. Broadcasters are moving towards IP. So what we're able to do is return video, audio, pull focus, control, full camera control, and we can do this. So we're kind of not displacing COFDM, but we can work alongside COFDM and giving much more flexibility in the production. And
what kind of latencies can you get it down to on a production in the context of private?
Did you sign the NDA?
Oh.
No. I'll go. Yeah. Let's say it's quick. At the moment, we are sub 100. We've been sub 100 for quite a while. And again, working with AMD, we've got some techniques that we will demonstrate at IBC this year where we can go sub frame. And if you're shooting 1080p 50, well, you've got an idea how quick that's going to be.
Yeah.
So the network latency can be as low as, say, 5 milliseconds one way. So it really does come down to the video encoder that you're using as well. So a lot of your time will be spent doing your video encode.
Yeah. So this is going to be critical, isn't it, for some of the premium sports and get that sort of latency and some of the applications around sports and you know, betting and things like that. Are you?
It's next door.
Oh, it is? Oh, thanks, Malcolm.
Yeah. So I guess this is going to be a heavy part of your kind of your marketing of this to the broadcast sector, to the media sector, to the betting sector. I think.
Right. All of it.
It's guaranteed bandwidth is going to give you super low.
Yep. And I think it's especially, I mean, I think the Queen's Court, was or King's Coronation was like an excellent example. But I think that's also around even like elections. It's around anything that's getting a lot of press and a lot of media coverage.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to say as well that with slicing that you do have the option to bring down a local edge.
Yeah.
So you're not having to spend all of that time going, at the moment, say ping on a public network is maybe 40 milliseconds or something like that, but that can be really brought down even on a slice by deploying a local edge.
Yeah.
So actually deploying 5G private networks for broadcasters is kind of commonplace now, isn't it? It's not an innovation anymore because it's been around for quite a while. What next? I mean, obviously the slicing piece is going to add to it, but where do you take this next?
I think just even talking about edge compute, I think that is looking at it all in that combination of really being able to leverage it. Like one of the, keywords that we keep hearing at the show is AI. And so how are you going to put all of these pieces together into a really nice workflow that makes sense?
Yeah.
And we've been very lucky. I'm working with IBC. We've worked with BBC. We've done coronations.
Elections in Denmark.
Yeah. So we've been very lucky to work with big companies, but the equipment that we've got and the route where it's going is that we started off a network in a box weighed 32 kilos and burnt 300 watts or 200 watts. We're now getting it down to, it'll go in the overhead locker of you can carry it on a plane. So it's going under 10 kilos and it will burn under 100 watts. And it will be cheaper. So we are fascinated by the idea of not giving it to the big broadcasters, the BBCs, the TV2s, the Skies, the Verizons. They will use this, but we can actually get it into the hands of different theatre users of
so this is what you're doing in the accelerators this year, isn't it? You're connecting live performances, so you can transmit, beam performances from one place to another pretty much near to real time. Is that right?
That's it. So a bit cheesy to say we want to democratize it, but at the moment we've been working with big, multi-billion-dollar rights holders for sports and MotoGP or whatever, but we want to try and get it down into a provincial theatre. We want the common man to be able to afford or to use these techniques, and that's what's around the corner, and it will scale. So I believe it will become very commonplace, and actually a slice then, if it becomes so prolific, which we believe it will, then wow, slice is a good thing to have.
I think the key message here is that private 5G is not competing at all with network slicing. They're absolutely complementary. It's all about scaling from a flexible production right the way through to a mass global kind of live event. And it's all about scale. You guys have been heavily involved in the IBC Accelerator program, as you've mentioned. You're both leading projects again this year in connecting live performances and in actually predictive generative AI.
Very exciting.
If you want to find out more about that, come to the IBC site, the IBC show site, and look at the accelerators. Some fantastic projects going on. This private 5G was developed within this program, and very proud of that. And we've got many more brilliant projects coming. I run the program, so I'm very passionate about it. Thank you so much. We're out of time, unfortunately, but this has been a great discussion. Chat to the guys if you have questions. They'll be hanging around here for a little while and come talk to us. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Erin, Rose. Thank you very much, Malcolm. Thank you very much, Sam.
Thanks,
Mark.